July the 24th, 2021. Guys, you're looking at the wide Atlantic satellite view from the National Hurricane Center. One of the things I want to point out is look at the amount of Saharan dust is in the atmosphere. They call it the Saharan sand layer, and it's being pushed towards Florida and the East Coast by a storm. They're not watching this system right here yet, but this is the one they are watching. It's now up to a 60% chance of development off the coast of Florida. Now, I'm going to zoom in and get a little closer to that, but you guys through the Carolinas and Tennessee and all across the nation have been having to deal with that wildfire smoke. So you're going to have a combination of both of these events, the Saharan dust layer and the smoke along the East Coast. Now, that will be more than likely happen after this system that's off the coast of Florida now does its thing, because right now it's almost vacuuming that smoke that's coming off the Carolinas. Again, we're going to look closer at it, but notice how much clearer it is. And you can see the center of rotation out in front of the storm. It's being blown to the east or to the right in the image in the upper level wind shear. But again, we do have this dust layer back in play now. Now, the hurricane season it goes in like 2 or 3 week cycles sometimes. You'll be busy, slow down, then get busy again throughout hurricane season. And we may be starting to see an uptick in that activity now. Now, these are current images as of 11:37 a.m. Central Time. You can see your timestamp at the bottom. Now, again, this system has a 60% chance of development. The upper level wind shear is stripping a lot of the clouds off to the northeast back into the Atlantic. And you guys in the UK, y'all been catching some storms. That's where all this has been going, and it is still more of it coming. But there was an extreme lightning event just a couple of days ago there. But they're going to send the National Hurricane Center, the Hurricane Hunter aircraft out this afternoon if it's necessary. But again, here's your center of circulation. I'm going to change maps in just a moment. We'll look at the details on the storm. One thing I want to point out, in the earlier images as the sun was rising, you could see how much of that wood smoke was along the coast of the Carolinas. See that? Now, as the sunlight has strengthened this storm, that it is starting to more or less vacuum that smoke out of the upper atmosphere, and it's sending into that long stream of weather going northeast across the Atlantic Ocean. We'll get a report sometimes this afternoon. They are saying that some of the buoys that are in that area offshore are detecting the pressure dropping, and that's always a sign of strengthening. The lower the pressure, the stronger the storm. But coming out of the right corner, we'll just keep an eye on that particular area. It is embedded in the Saharan dust layer, and that can inhibit development if anything happens. But we're coming back to that season. We'll just see what happens with that one. But the one that's off the coast of Florida, you're going to have to pay attention to it. Let's look at what the National Hurricane Center is saying. Now, the 2-day forecast and the 5-day forecast are exactly the same now. But notice this is the 5-day forecast because it gives you somewhat of a cone around the center of circulation. And it's pretty much going to sit still, it looks like. There's just not a lot of development. If anything, looking at the images, it may continue to drop a little further south. But they're saying, this was 8 a.m. this morning, there has not been another update. But showers and thunderstorm activity has increased a bit this morning in association with the low pressure system located about 200 miles east of Daytona Beach, Florida. And the only thing that's changed is went from 40% last night, now at 60% chance of development. Nearby buoy observations also indicate that surface pressures have been falling close to the center of the system. However, the associated shower and thunderstorm activity remains disorganized and located primarily south and east of the center. That's what you're seeing as the tops were being blown off across the Atlantic. Environmental conditions are forecasted to become a bit more favorable for development, and a tropical depression could form over the next day or so while the low meanders offshore the Florida peninsula. Interest in Florida should continue to monitor the progress of the system. An Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunter aircraft is scheduled to investigate the system later today if necessary. Again, your 2-day and 5-day forecast is at 60%. So there again, if this thing starts to wrap that storm around that center of circulation, then it will intensify and become more dangerous. We'll just have to watch it because nobody knows where it's going yet. It's obvious with this orange area. Usually that will be to one side of the center of circulation, but so it's an uncertainty because of that front that's being pulled down across the Great Lakes and down towards the East Coast, bringing a lot of that smoke. That's going to be a steering factor as well as any high pressure over the Atlantic. Now, earlier this morning, they were talking about the Bootleg Fire was a little bit better because there was not as much wind. But as we're going into the day now, there's probably, 9:44 something on the West Coast, somewhere around that time now. But look at the smoke in California and Oregon. And it's starting to pull into this northeast movement that you see all across the nation. But it's very intense in this area here, guys. If you were in California, I know you guys are catching it. Check that out. California, Oregon, Northwest Nevada. Intense. I'm going to go a little closer to that. But you can see all the way across the nation here and out into the Gulf of Mexico. Again, it's been quiet. We're going to keep an eye on all of that. Now, before we look at the satellite images over in California, let's take a look at this map. And the largest fire that's there, and it's really contributing to that smoke that's part of the Bootleg Fire north of there in Oregon, is the Dixie Fire. And they're saying it's 181,298 acres right now. It's 19% contained, and that was as of 8:14 a.m. Now, if that's West Coast time, that's not that far back, but it's right there. And this is in the Butte and Plumas counties. It's above the Cresta Dam near the Feather River Canyon. Again, 181,289 acres. And this is what it looks like from the satellite images right there. And you can see that heat signature, and it is throwing some smoke. Again, think about the 181,000 acres. That's a lot of land. But you've had that problem many times over north of here in the Bootleg Fire up in Oregon. But guys, you can see right where this area is at. You smoke all through the Sacramento Valley here, and it's all moving north, getting caught up in the jet stream, and it's coming out on the East Coast. Now, again, they said this morning that the wind was favorable for them to kind of get in there. It wasn't pushing the fire so hard, and I'm talking about the Bootleg Fire in Oregon. Now, Klamath Lake is right there, guys, in Klamath Falls. You can see it under the smoke. And the fire area is pretty much from here to here. It was probably approaching 1 million acres, guys. Somebody from that area let me know what what information you got. It was supposed to be approaching 1 million plus acres by now. The last report was 400,000. So that's huge. There's a lot of people. I think a lot of communities have been burned there, as well as in California. A lot of damage. I saw a lot of pictures. I think that most of the ones I saw were from the Dixie Fire down in California, but entire rows of power lines and power poles were burned and snapped. So I know a lot of people are without power, and that's going to take some time to restore, and you're in the middle of a heat wave. It goes back to my video called The Great Migration. What would be the tripping point for that to happen is if this water situation does not get better. A lot of people are running low. A lot of people are running out. Communities are down to very low levels in some areas. So you're going to have to make a choice. If you're on a lake or a river, something like that, you probably won't have much problems unless they start restricting it and patrolling it. Who knows the way things are happening now. But we're at a record for the last 2 years on everything from hurricanes to these fires. And most of it has to do with the penetration of this gamma radiation through our atmosphere because our shields have been weak because of grand solar minimum. They are starting to strengthen somewhat, but a lot of what we're seeing is caused by that. Now, there has been weather wars and the strive for information since the 60s for satellites to control the weather. You've seen videos like that. And I think if I've still got the one that I've played before, I'll show you one of our presidents talking about that at the end of this video. So we know that, so for what, 70 years now, 60-something years that we've been striving for that technology, and it has advanced so far beyond what we will ever be told that it would probably blow our minds. But in the situation on the other side of the nation, with that storm coming off of, came through Alabama into Georgia, off into the Atlantic, way before there was much sign of it at all. You guys, if you remember when I first mentioned it, you couldn't tell by looking at the satellite images or the radar that there was anything there at all. Just makes you wonder, because that's very unusual for a storm to come off there, cross land, and pretty clear conditions, and then strengthen and come back down towards Florida instead of being pulled into the North Atlantic, or at least up the East Coast. We still don't know exactly what it's going to do, but things they're heating up in more ways than one, and we don't know what nations have what technology and what tit for tat is going on. We just don't know yet, but the West Coast is catching it. If things get really rough in the Atlantic and the Caribbean, then it could get just as bad on the other side of the planet. But right now, I think the West Coast is in very deep trouble, simply because of what you're seeing. The drought is causing this. I mean, I'm sure there's lightning strikes, and possibly there's always some careless camper or arson or whatever involved in some of these fires. And then when the ground is this dry, it will happen. And people have been talking about lava movement very close to the surface that can ignite these. So I'm not there. I can't put my hands on. I can't look at it and see it and analyze it. So I don't know. But there's all of those reports are out there. But right now, for you folks affected by the fire, make sure you're evacuating. And if you can get out away from the smoke, it may be very helpful to your lungs and your kids' lungs and the elderly. Be aware of that. And again, this is just going to be another wave that's picked up, very concentrated, and moved across our nation. Guys, we're watching it. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.
And that message calls for new frontiers, new vision. It calls for us taking the steps now that will make us no longer second in space and in science. It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather. And he who controls the weather will control the world.